Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Powerbomb Weekly. First, from Bremerton, via the backwoods of West Virginia and the oil fields of Texas, he is the Sultan of Sarcasm. He agrees with everything that Uncle Dave Meltzer says, Michael Burdett. And his sparring partner from Paulsbo, via the mean streets of Rhode Island and the cornfields of Nebraska, he is the king of useless knowledge and an honorary member of the Kiss Vince's Ass Club, Joey Marcello.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Okay, show's done. I got nothing for that. That is excellent, man. Very well done. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the gentleman who assisted Joseph in producing this, but thank you very much. That is a riot, man.
Yeah.
Very, very cool to have an intro for the show.
Yeah, he did all the voice. I wrote everything. He supplied the voice.
Excellent.
I did all the mixing of the things.
That is awesome.
So,
very cool.
Welcome to show one of one.
Yeah, show
episode.
101 of this. For those of you who are just joining in and saw the intro for it, this show is going to be called Powerbomb Weekly. It's a great little vanity that was one of the names that I picked that won the fan poll that we put up on Facebook. Thank you guys very much for joining us here tonight for show numero uno. You know, I'm excited. You excited?
Yeah, excited, nervous, all of that.
I can't say labor of love because we really put about minimum effort into a lot of this, but this has definitely been something we've discussed for 4-5 years.
We've been talking about this
now
forever.
about doing something like this and watching a lot of our friends and other people we have involved in this industry kind of take it a step further and building those templates. We're kind of throwing our hat in the ring, so to speak, and stepping through the ropes into it and hoping everybody enjoys it so far.
Nice puns.
Yes, I'm
All right.
all for it, man.
So we have at least 6 weeks worth of shows planned. We'll see what happens. And I think that if we get to 6 shows, then we actually have committed.
I think so too. We could call that a season at that point, you know? I mean, like Raw's opening season, we can call it a season, you know?
All right, so show one, episode 1, as we've mentioned, we're just going to talk about ourselves, why we are doing this show, what brought us here, what got us here, and then we'll eventually get to how we met, and then we'll talk about the pay-per-view that you did not watch, Hell in a Cell.
I did not see it. As I informed Joseph earlier, my weekend got really jammed up. I didn't get a chance to catch the pay-per-view on it. I had commitments on Sunday. Normally, I watch the follow-ups on Monday and kind of get Raw when they move it over to the Hula, and I just got super behind. Oh, I know, I love it. I got super behind. I didn't get a chance to do it, and I really wanted to watch the UFC pay-per-view, so that way I could watch what is potentially Khabib Nurmagomedov's last fight. I did not fall asleep on my keyboard when I typed that out, by the way, on my personal page. That is the gentleman's name. Looks like he's going to retire at 29-0 as a champion. So if anybody enjoys the UFC and mixed martial arts, that was a great pay-per-view. Heck of a fight. He actually put a man named Justin Gaethje, who is a great stand-up striker, tapped him out, man. Choked him out, actually made him pass out because the referee did not notice that Justin was trying to tap out in it. And Khabib took his gloves off, retired in the middle of the ring, and it's something really cool to see somebody go out on top. Unfortunately, I have heard some rumors of the pay-per-views and some of the things that have happened in the world of wrestling this week. Not everybody seems to have gone out on top this week. A lot of people seem to have gone out in the mid-card. Yes, so where would you like to start? Would you like to start with where we're at and what we're doing, or out in the
What I would like is if somebody were watching this could tell us if they can hear us. But, you can't always get what you want. So, I would hate for us to be, 20 minutes in.
and they're like, oh, your audio's not working.
Yes. But, you would think that your wife or Sean or somebody would be watching.
The wife is currently cooking dinner for the youngin' right now, and
Anyway.
yes, we will see.
It's alright, my wife's not watching either.
Okay.
So,
They've already given up hope on us, right?
yeah, they just don't care. So, Mike.
Yes, sir.
What got you into wrestling? Tell me about your wrestling journey.
Okay, so I tried to put a lot of this in sequence for it, and I apologize if I go long.
That's what we have planned.
We have plenty of this. This is mainly our focus on is what kind of made you a fan. Unfortunately, this question kind of came up because fans are a weird spot right now. You know, well, we got the thumbs up, so we're definitely doing good. You know, being a fan is a really weird thing right now because we have a lot of exposure to what is the wrestling business. And, you know, as much as I hate to start off with saying it, we know that it is a predetermined event.
What?
Like, this is not news to anyone. So fans are really more into the ins and outs of what makes the wrestling business work as opposed to what happens in the ring, it seems, nowadays. What happens in the ring a lot of times is kind of the afterthought of the fans. What really got me interested, unfortunately, is a little bit of that. And the reason for it is that my father is kind of what started me on wrestling. Now, my father was not a super fan of wrestling because he knew that it was a predetermined event. My father was involved at a younger age with a man that many wrestling fans might know the name of. He's definitely come along in a lot of talked about radio segments. Jim Cornette and a lot of other people have brought this name up, Buzz Sawyer. So my father was associated with Buzz Sawyer. For anybody who is familiar with Buzz Sawyer and knows some of his outside of the rings antics, especially with his issues with drug addiction and police officers and things like that, you can start to imagine where the parallel of my father knowing him actually comes from.
And if they don't know about Buzz Sawyer, they're going to learn all about it next season on Tales of the Dark Side Tales of the Ring.
Buzz was an interesting character. He died of heart failure due to a drug overdose sometime in around 1992 or so. I had a couple meetings with him at a very young age. My father kind of stepped away from a lot of that. But my father was in and around wrestlers, and he knew wrestlers. He knew them largely through his association with Buzz Sawyer, and also because my father worked at a men's clothing store, a very trendy men's clothing store. The name, I apologize, I cannot remember off the top of my head right now. What he actually did there was he worked in a lot of the design and fitting areas for people. So, you know, gentlemen would come in and get their suits and their trendy clothes wear and things like that done. And my father actually became very well known at the point for getting wrestlers their clothes for TV and things like that. So typically what would happen is, especially in the area that we're at, dealing with West Virginia, Ohio, and a lot of stuff like that, this is a big Jim Crockett territory at this point right now, okay? So a lot of southern wrestling, as they like to say, is really happening in and around this area. West Virginia was a decent spot, especially in the Kanawha area, for the wrestling paper. You know, some of the pay-per-views happen down there, some of the bigger events happen down there. They always ran a show in that area at least once or twice a year. The WWF was not really coming there because it was a very southern territory, and also it's a very poor coal mining kind of style area, so you can't really run a lot of events constantly through there because people just don't have the money at the time to do that, to go into these events. What they would do is they would kind of set a lot of stuff up where they would do television and shoot things at the local news stations. Now, a lot of people have talked about this before, where they kind of come in, they get the back room, they have all the news equipment, they have all the video cameras ready to go, they have all the audio stuff. Wrestlers come in, shoot their promos, and leave. My father was involved in that section of it because what he would do was he would actually set up a lot of the suits and things that some of these guys would actually wear while they were going in to cut their promos. You know, those old stuff of, hey, you know, next week, Philadelphia, we're coming at you. I'm going to take, you know, Lex Luger in the cage or whatever, you know?
When Flair would wear the nice suit.
But if a guy walks out from behind that curtain and he's wearing about $35,000 worth of jewelry, he's wearing about $1,200 worth of clothes.
Which is really what brought it into it, because there are several pictures of family members that I have in the house that my mother and father lived in, where there are Dusty Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, a lot of the Southern boys, you know, things like that are in the background. And you can see a couple different people, you know, they're drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, playing cards, typical things that the guys would do after the events, because they would actually go to my parents' house and kind of, you know, continue the party at the house, essentially. The one thing about wrestling that my father always loved that he talked about was Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. Their rivalry for what they had at the time was 100% legitimate. This is a story that I always loved that he would tell. Essentially, if they came in to do TV and do something, They've talked about it in a couple of the documentaries and things that they've done where Dusty, obviously being in the office, would come in early. So he would come into town, on the Thursday if they did the shoots on Friday, had the matches on Saturday and Sunday, got out of town, right? Dusty would come in and be a part of that, and he would go in and get a suit. If Dusty came in and got a two-piece suit, Flair would have to come in after the next day, and he would make sure he got a three-piece suit with a square for TV. If Dusty bought a watch, Flair had to have a bigger watch. If he bought, cufflinks, Flair had to come in and have diamond cufflinks.
We're going to talk about that later, I think, with AEW.
Yes, a little bit of that, yeah. So that's really what got me interested in it, was the rivalries and the actual part of the wrestling. And that really pulled me into it because, as I said, he wasn't a super fan, and he already kind of knew a little bit of the exposure with it because he'd been in and around a couple of the guys. And they let me kind of follow with that. I got to meet a lot of great people when I was younger because of that. I got to meet the Steiners at a very young age. I got to meet, a lot of these guys. Hacksaw Jim Duggan was definitely a part of it at that point in time, before they kind of went up to Vince and kind of back and forth here and there.
Did Steiner help you with your math?
I don't believe in it, and neither does he, because I don't think Steiner believes in anything that isn't in front of him at this point. That man is... I will say this on a quick note. I've met Steiner a couple times. I met Mini Steiner, I met Larger Steiner, and then I met Godzilla Steiner a couple years ago at that point. I don't know what that man does, if it's growth hormone or if he
does this.
If anybody has seen his workout DVD that he did, please go watch the YouTube clips of that. It is a thing of beauty. He has what I can only imagine are prostitutes come into the gym where he's at, and he is literally picking them up over his head and having girls sit on his shoulders while he's doing squats. He has a great line in it called "Curls for the Girls," which is amazing. So if you've never seen Scott Steiner's workout DVD, please go watch this on YouTube. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. But I will say, meeting Scott and Rick a couple times throughout the years, I can't, I don't have their name in my phone or anything like that. This has been many, many years removed. They were extremely nice, very well-behaved gentlemen, and the complete opposite of what you would actually have gotten from them, and some of the stories of them just bullying people in the ring and, taping, Disco Inferno to the wall and shoving a pencil up his ass or something. None of that was actually presented as a fan. They actually were very, very nice guys and very respectful to me. I got to meet Luger, I got to meet Sting, I got to meet a lot of these guys when they were really in their early peak of what would have been WCW Crockett at that point, going into the Ted Turner buyout. Once the Eric Bischoff regime and things like that came in and pretty much had eliminated a lot of those people out, I think one of the last times I saw WCW run was the pay-per-view that they ran in West Virginia, which I believe was sold out. Someone might be able to correct me for that. I think it was 98 sold out, somewhere along that lines, because I think the first one actually took place in 97-ish or so in Black Hills, because Bischoff loves to be up in that area because that's where he's from. That's really what brought me into wrestling, was these larger-than-life, amazing characters that I got a small chance to know in random little meetings here and there, in and out. My parents let that foster, and they didn't ever break that, that it wasn't legitimate. They let me go with it for a long time.
It's still real to me, man.
Yeah, it is still real to me, and I love that, and that's why I can really say that these guys, when they talk about, okay, is it, it's not fake. It's not. These guys really do get hurt. These guys really do put themselves in positions where they don't get to see their families. They don't make a lot of money. They don't have health insurance, and they do this for entertainment purposes. And when you look at the guys who are truly successful in this business, who we remember to this day, it took a lot for them to be able to get there. And even guys who you may or may not like, who've only been in the business 6-9 months before they get a big push on WWE, the number of those guys compared to what is actually on a pro team, like a football team or something like that, is much smaller window. And it's a lot smaller dollar amount too. I mean, I think the losingest, poorest team in the NFL is still worth over $1 billion at this point. And they have a roster of, what, 200 players sometimes on some of these guys. You know,
Yeah, I
first,
know,
second,
I think
third,
it's
fourth
like-
string quarterbacks, stuff like that. And when you look at that on a national level, wrestling has like the WWE's got what, maybe
50?
150 contracted people at this
Right.
point.
50 on
You know?
TV.
You know, 50 on TV and then a bunch of guys underneath. So it takes a lot to be a part of this. It takes a lot to get into this sport. And I love it. I love it to this day. I love being made fun of for liking wrestling. You know, it puts me in that nice subgroup. It's like listening to music or liking a movie or a genre that isn't really popular with people to this point, you know, because wrestling used to be the biggest thing in the world. And now it's an entertainment engine, but it's still very, very a part of culture, not just American culture. It's a part of culture. You know, this is a worldwide thing that people are involved in, and being a fan of that is something I like to take pride in. And that really does go back to my father not exposing the business to me and saying, you know, all these guys are fucking fake. They all hang out together. They do whatever. You know, they didn't do that. They let me foster that and love that. And I like guys for that and what they do, and the women. You know, no disrespect to those guys. I say guys, women. Yeah, I like the big oily men essentially at that point. But you know, that's really what brought me into it. What about you, sir? What got you into it?
Well, before I go into my, you know what? Okay, we can do it like this.
You can ask me questions.
No, yeah. So, I broke my dissertation because I write things down. I wrote my dissertation into different.
I had a small note that I forgot already. Very quickly, two things that people might remember Buzz Sawyer for, going back to that. One is the last Battle of Atlanta, which is a bloodbath of a match that you can actually watch on the WWE Network, I believe, at this point, with Tommy Rich. It is the first enclosed cage match, so that's where they say they kind of got the idea for Hell in the Cell from. The other thing that he's very well known for, that I believe I might have mentioned to you at one point, is Mick Foley talks about him in his book as being the guy who essentially beat him up, broke his nose, took his money, told him that that's how you break into wrestling, and booked it and never came back and taught actually Mick how to perform in the ring. So those would be the two things that Buzz Sawyer would be most known for.
I have that book over there on the bookshelf.
Yes.
So
I'll save the Mick Foley story for in a minute.
All right, yeah. So no. Okay, so that was your early. Okay, so what we can do is you do your early, now I'll do my early, and then we'll go on to
a little bit.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
So I started watching wrestling in about 84, 85. It had to have been before 85 because in 85 I moved to Nebraska. So I know that.
It's funny that we talked about it earlier, that actually means that he has been watching wrestling as long as I've been alive. I was born in 84.
Thanks. So I'm almost. So yeah, I just turned 45. So sometimes my memories are not the greatest. You will hear me stutter and stammer and try to remember things in easy words. I couldn't remember an easy word earlier.
I'll just smack him for the reboot real quick, and then
But I do know that, like I said, I'm about 95% sure that the first time I ever watched wrestling, and yes, I talk with my hands.
I was all over the place. So we're good.
First time I ever watched wrestling was at my friend Vinny and Sonny's house, or Marshall. Vinny Cohen, Marshall Cohen, they lived next door to me. They were like an Irish family, like your typical. Dad was a loud, angry man half the time, but he was an amazing man and he was a loving man. And their mom was, I called her mom, and she took us in, and we got into a lot of fun and trouble growing up. But Marshall and Vinny, or Sonny, Vinny and Sonny, or Marshall, they like the first time I watched wrestling. And this is when the rock and roll connection was happening. Like we would see the Wendy Richter videos with Lou Albano. And I'm pretty sure I watched the first WrestleMania at their house when it was closed circuited. They would get the pay-per-views, or at least this is my memory of it. They would get the pay-per-views, but I'd see wrestling there. We didn't have cable; they did, and that's where I really started getting it. And then Friday nights at our house was A-Team, Dukes of Hazzard, V, all those things, and then Mr. T, A-Team, Hulk Hogan started guest starring on the A-Team.
Yeah.
And so Hulk Hogan, that was the whole rock and wrestling connection. So that got my dad into it a little bit. So I would watch Saturday Morning Superstars, back in the day. Saturday Morning Superstars is where they have the mid-card wrestlers wrestle the jobbers, and then every now and then do a pre-recorded interview, like you were saying, and Hulk Hogan would do an interview, but you'd never see Hulk Hogan wrestle on Superstars.
No, a lot of that stuff is shot someplace else. It's been cut in.
So So then, because Dad was starting to get into wrestling, we would watch. I actually got to see Hulk Hogan wrestle Jesse Ventura at the Providence Civic Center, and then I got to watch the rematch.
Okay.
This is back when Hillbilly Jim, Uncle Elmer, Cousin Jed, Bobby Sue, back when Paul Orndorff would wrestle with Greg the Hammer Valentine. They were like the Dream Team.
Okay. Remind me real quick when we get into the little bit later of the part of the business to give you my Paul Orndorff story.
Interestingly enough, I have a Greg the Hammer Valentine story.
Oh, nice.
So the only other, and so then, like I said, in '85 we moved to Nebraska.